The Eva Cassidy band had been playing in the Washington DC area for years, and still they didn't have a record deal. This was partly because Eva didn't want to limit herself to one musical genre. The only option that the musicians had left was to record a live album. Producer and bass player Chris Biondo and manager Al Dale convinced Eva of the need to make such an album and decided they would record a performance in legendary jazz club Blues Alley. They hired an engineer to record 2 performances, 2 different sets on 2 successive evenings, January 2 and 3, 1996. This would give them the opportunity to play each song twice. Brian McCulley, a friend and colleague from Baker's nursery, would film the shows. The burden on Eva to record this live album was heavy. She loved to work in a recording studio. Performing live was far from easy for her. This would also be her first real album with a band, making things even more difficult. However, Al Dale and the band were convinced that she could do the job. They had never heard Eva sing badly or out of tune. During rehearsals on the 2nd of January 1996, sound engineer Roy Battle discovered an unusual noise. The sound mixer shared an electrical circuit with the lights, so that when these lights were dimmed, the electronic resistance increased, affecting the sound. Usually this low-level interference wouldn't be too intrusive on large speakers, but on sophisticated recording systems, the growling drone becomes all too obvious. Roy worked out what was causing the sound to distort and changed several cables. However, the first guests had started to arrive by then, and the Blues Alley staff asked him to finish up. Believing it to be fixed, Roy gave the go-ahead. Eva had listened to Al carefully. She was decked up like a beauty queen and she paced around her dressing room in unfamiliar high heels. Al introduced the band, saying, "I want you to know that this is recorded live tonight. It's gonna be heard all over the world. And if you want to tell people, hey, that's me right there, you know, you've got to make noise in all the right places. So let's start it out right now and give a Blues Alley welcome to Miss Eva Cassidy." The band took to the stage and the musicians made a relaxed impression. Nobody seemed to be aware of the technical catastrophe hanging over their heads. Immediately after the first night's performances, the group listened eagerly to the tapes. They soon realized that the problem with the sound had not been fixed at all. In fact, there was something radically wrong. The entire recording had been in vain. Using the material for a record was out of the question. This was a huge disappointment, not only because they had played very well that evening, but because the pressure for the second night was ratcheted up several notches. Making a live recording is always risky. Musicians play more carefully than usual, and every band member becomes acutely aware of their limits. Organizing 2 sessions had helped them to relax on the first night. They had been fresh and eager and able to push the demands of recording live out of their minds. On the second night, the entire band was feeling enormous pressure. On the film footage we can see Eva wearing a large, oversized shirt, black leggings and work boots. There was no point dressing up, since everything rested on a decent audio. The smile on her face had transformed into worry. Her eyelids were heavy and she had dark circles under her eyes. Eva had developed a cold and everyone began to wonder whether she'd be able to cut it. Once again, Al introduced the band.
Let's start it out right now and give a Blues Alley welcome to Eva Cassidy.
Keith Grimes did marvelous things that night. Lenny Williams was brilliant on his Steinway 6-foot grand piano. His hammer playing filled out the band's sound and he brought a jazzier feel to the music. Ray's McLeod's drums were swinging heavily, the volume high but not annoyingly so. Chris Biondo's walking bass was leading the way for the other musicians. Eva's confidence was on the rise. She had made solid progress. The sad thing was that she would die in the same year, 1996, on the 2nd of November. The Blues Alley version of Fields of Gold was for many listeners their introduction to the hypnotic voice of Eva Cassidy. Autumn Leaves was another beautiful solo piece. Halfway this mature and controlled version, we hear a piano solo from Lenny Williams. Afterward, Lenny confessed that he had hardly dared to play along on Autumn Leaves. It was like drawing a moustache on the Mona Lisa, he said. A week after the concert, Al, Chris and Eva listened to the tapes to decide the running order of the album. Al and Chris did most of the talking, with Eva listening intently. Suddenly, from nowhere, Eva spoke. "I don't like this." Al and Chris immediately tried to reassure her. "It's a live recording, Eva. Listeners don't expect everything to be perfect." Chris tried to focus on each song rather than the concert as a whole, but Eva's reply was an uncompromising no. They talked for hours and Eva was clearly tired. Al concluded, "It is possible to put together a good album out of the material we have." Chris added, "I can fix any glitches." Eva hesitated. Finally, Chris and Al promised her that they would add some studio recordings to the live concert performances, which would lead to an acceptable and coherent album. Then Eva agreed. Eva asked her old friend Larry Melton, who was not only her first bass player but also a professional photographer, to take the cover photo for the proposed album. Eva and Larry drove to Georgetown and asked the owner of Blues Alley if he would put the announcement for Eva's concert back on the board above the entrance, to which he happily agreed. Music critic Joel E. Siegel wrote in the Washington City paper, "Live at Blues Alley is a triumph." Eva's dissatisfaction with the album became clear in a letter she wrote to her brother Dan. "I am very aware of all the mistakes. This recording was incredibly stressful. We were having technical difficulties. My voice was in a bad shape. It's always like that in the winter. I prefer studio recordings. I'm so tired of competing with loud guitars and drums, and I'm tired of singing R&B and blues. I'm sick of shouting. You will be laughing at how out of tune the guitars are on Fields of Gold." Almost 20 years after Eva Cassidy's death, the rest of the world could hear the entire Blues Alley concert on the album Nightbird in 2015. 12 of the songs were previously unreleased, including the title track Nightbird, as well as the jazz standards It Don't Mean a Thing and Fever. No weak spots could be discovered on Nightbird. The Eva Cassidy Band played 2 sets of solid and sparkling songs, a rocking rendition of Take Me to the River, a soulful Chain of Fools and a steamy Route 66. Even as a jazz band, the Eva Cassidy Band did an excellent job. The stripped-back rendition of Waily Waily is a real surprise. Lenny Williams accompanies Waily Waily with beautiful control. Anyone who listens to the 31 tracks on this double album must conclude that music history was written on the 3rd of January 1996. Even when Eva Cassidy had a cold, she still sang better than most healthy singers.
But love grows old.